All right. I think we're live. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna jump straight in. Some housekeeping items. So I am running a giveaway every month. This month's giveaway I announced on Thursday, I think, maybe Thursday or Wednesday. And yeah, it's a £50 Amazon gift card. So if you are interested, like, comment, and share the post that I announced the giveaway on, and you'll be entered. And it will be like a weighted distribution. So the more you interact with the post, the higher your chances are of winning. And I'll be doing the winner of this month's giveaway next week on live. So if you do want a free Amazon gift card worth 50 quid, then yeah, the post is there. I might try and star it on my profile so it's easier to access. But yeah, cool. Housekeeping items done. Um, in today's live stream, we're going to be talking about something that came up on the news this past week. So I'm sure some of you saw the situation in Spain where there was a big outage there. And that got me and a few other people I was talking to talking about what systems do we heavily rely on every day to, I don't know, to like develop systems, and like what systems do we heavily rely on while using the internet that most people don't even know about, that if they went offline would wreak havoc on everyone trying to use the internet. So yeah, we're going to be discussing that topic, and before that we'll be explaining how the internet actually works. So when you search for a website in your browser, what actually happens when you type that in, from the point where you click enter to the point where the website is actually loaded and shown on the browser. So we're going to be explaining that first, and then we'll be talking about a company that we all use every single day if we're using the internet, and the consequences of if that company went offline for even a couple of seconds, I think could have disastrous impact. So yeah, for the ones in the audience that are quite technical, they probably know which company I'm talking about. So it's obviously Cloudflare. If Cloudflare went down, almost every company that you use, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, they all probably use Cloudflare somehow. So in in some way, shape, or form. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And yeah, if I do sound like I'm tired, I have an eye infection. I was actually supposed to cancel this live stream, but the show must go on. Because I know some people are out there saying, oh, yeah, he's not going to be consistent with this live streaming stuff. So this is for those people. Okay, cool. All right, let's just jump straight in. Give me 1 second. Let me set up some things. Get my Excalibur up and share my screen. If you just joined, I think I'll quickly recap what we're going over. Basically explaining how the internet works. So when you search for a website, what actually happens in the background when you click enter. And from there, we're then going to transition into talking about if a certain company went down, what would actually happen to the state of the internet around the world. And yeah, and for those of you that actually know your tech, you probably know what company I'm talking about, Cloudflare. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm just getting some stuff up ready. Sorry for the delay. I just need to edit a few things. Um, I should have done this before actually starting the live stream, but if you just joined it, it will definitely get more entertaining than this. Okay, cool. So, all right. Am I showing my screen? No. Let me share my screen. Window, schedule. Cool. Can you guys see that? Let me try zooming in. Let me adjust the camera. I can move slightly this way. Cool. All right. So you've probably done it a million times. You open your browser, type in something like google.com and click enter. And it just works. It seems like magic. But what really happens when you press the enter key is it kicks off a chain reaction across your computer through Wi-Fi, your ISP, underwater cables, global servers, all in less than a second. So right now we're going to talk about what actually happens, and we're going to take it on a journey from first principles and explain it. So we'll uncover all of the underlying technology that quietly makes the internet work, and from there we'll look for certain companies that we heavily rely on and try to explain the chain reaction of events that would take place if that company was to go offline for even a few minutes. So let's just jump straight in. So when you search for something like google.com, and you click enter, okay, let's actually go right down to the hardware level. So you guys can not only get the breadth, but also the depth. So when you click the enter button, your keyboard detects that press and converts it into an electrical signal. And that electrical signal then flows through to your operating system, and the operating system then passes the message to the browser saying, hey browser, the user just pressed enter after typing this URL. So that's how your browser knows that you've typed something in. And then from here, your browser will decide what to do. And since it's google.com, usually when you search for an address, the browser automatically puts in something like HTTP, like this. And yeah, so now your browser wants to try and load google.com. That's what actually happens. So before it actually loads anything, your browser needs to know where to go. And this is where something called domain name resolution, is it domain name resolution? DNS. Yeah, domain name servers. That's what DNS servers are. But yeah, so your browser will communicate with a DNS server, and the DNS server is basically like, it's like a directory with all of the IP addresses that map to web addresses. But before it actually checks with the DNS servers, it checks its own cache. So has it ever seen google.com before? And the likelihood of it being in the cache is higher if it's a very popular website. So something like google.com most likely will be in the cache. If not, then the browser, wait, let me actually draw this so you guys can see. So we draw an arrow to cache, draw a little box around it. Cache. Put that there, and we'll say this is your browser. Oh, why is that Okay, cool. So first it checks its own cache, and if it's not in the cache, it will then ask the operating system. And the operating system usually stores some IP addresses, and if it's still not been discovered what the IP address of the web address is, then your browser, sorry, not the browser, the request now goes through network DNS resolvers. So what that means is it will then hit an external service to try and locate the IP address of this web address. And it starts with root DNS servers. So what that means is, obviously, if you don't know the IP address of the DNS servers, it could get pretty redundant. I.e., if you never have the first IP address, you never know where to go to actually make requests. So these are known as root DNS servers, which send so they send us back some information about what domain names they have, and if it's not there, then it goes through a cycle to see if the next DNS server has the IP address of this web address. And so all these DNS servers are talking to each other and trying to actually get the IP address of this web address, and then eventually one will have it. If none of them have it, and this request has been going around the globe for quite a while, then obviously your request will time out. And once that timeout happens, you as a user will get an error on your screen. So, but now let's go down the happy path. So let's say it was able to actually locate the IP address of google.com. It will try to connect to that IP address. So how it actually connects to it is a TCP handshake. But before that, let me draw another box, the IP address. So this is IP, this is the server for google.com. I think before I go any further, let me try and make this little graphic a bit easier to understand. So it checks the cache. If it's not in the cache, it goes to DNS servers. So we need a little box for DNS servers. DNS. We'll put that there. So essentially, your browser checks the cache. If it's not in the cache, it will then check the DNS server, which can then recursively go and check other DNS servers that it knows. And from there, eventually, you will get the IP address of the server that hosts google.com. IP address. Let's move this slightly lower. Okay, cool. Now it knows where the server is because it has the IP address. It will then perform the TCP handshake. And what the TCP handshake is a three-part conversation between your computer and Google server to basically introduce each other so that they can start communicating. So how it works is using different packets. So it starts off with an SYN packet, and yeah, so once the TCP handshake is done, at this. TCP handshake. I think I need to get better at using Excalibur because I feel like once I learn this tool properly, I think the live streams will become a lot smoother. I feel like right now they're very interrupted. Okay, cool. So now our browser has actually made the TCP connection to one of Google servers. It's time to actually make that connection secure. So how we do that is where we use the transport layer security. And let's just quickly walk through how that works as well. I think I need to move this down as well. This is our browser. Okay, so now it needs to secure this connection, and how it does that is using TLS. Secure the connection with TLS using a TLS handshake again. So this is step one, the TCP handshake, but that is unsecure. So now it has to do a TLS handshake to actually make this connection secure. And how it does that is essentially what happens is your browser sends the server hello, and it includes the TLS version it's going to use, a list of encryption methods, a random number, and I think an indication of what it expects the server to be. So let's say it sends a TLS client hello to a server for, I don't know, TikTok, but it wants Google. The server on the other end, if it doesn't receive a request for what it is, it will just reject it. So yeah, and now once everything's been verified, the server will then send back a server hello, basically confirming the standards of communication. So like what version of TLS they're going to be using, and it also sends back a digital certificate proving that it is Google. And in that certificate, you have things like I think it includes Google's public key, and it also needs to be signed by a trusted authority. And once it does that, your browser then needs to check the certificate. Let me draw this stuff as well. It's quite important. So TCP handshake, and then it does a TLS handshake, and while doing the TLS handshake, they exchange some information. So the browser sends server a client hello, client hello. The server sends back server hello. And yeah, like I said before, with the server hello, it's sending back all the information that the browser needs to be able to start sending information back and forth. So it's almost like a confirmation of the protocol they'll be using and the encryption method, and also sends back a digital certificate. So that's in the server hello. Now, once the browser gets back the digital certificates, it checks to see if it's actually valid, who issued it, and if it's expired or not. If that passes, and like we said, we're going down the happy path right now, then great. But if it doesn't pass, then the browser will block the connection because the server is impersonating the actual server. So that's like an attack vector that people can use. Now, once once the browser has been verified and the server has been verified, then they now need to exchange encryption keys so that the connection is actually secure. This is done with key exchange, and I think the protocol uses Diffie-Hellman or the algorithm used. So share encryption keys using Diffie-Hellman. And if you don't know what Diffie-Hellman is, it's an algorithm for key exchange. I studied it back in uni. It's actually very interesting. It's basically the premise of Diffie-Hellman is how do you exchange secure information on an unsecure network, such that the browser and the server can both start exchanging information on an unsecured network in a secured way. I definitely recommend looking up Diffie-Hellman if you don't know what it is or how it works, because I mean cybersecurity like as a whole is quite interesting. But yeah, just knowing the algorithms used when you are using the internet can be quite fascinating. So share encryption keys using Diffie-Hellman. Okay. Now, once they've shared the encryption keys, so now once the browser has its private key and the server's public key, and the server now has its private key and the browser's public key, it can now use those two to send messages that can only be decoded by the browser using its private key. Damn, I should have brushed up on my cybersecurity knowledge, because if you don't understand what Diffie-Hellman's doing, it's using I think like modular math, and essentially it wraps the message in two like layers of security that can only be decoded if you have the private key that maps to the public key that you're sharing around. And how it works is, if memory serves me well, I think it uses, I can't remember, is it prime numbers? But yeah, essentially some math that is very technically hard to crack. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so I'm not going to really go into detail there. But yeah, if you guys are interested, I'll try to find my cybersecurity notes from uni. I'm pretty sure Diffie-Hellman's in there. But yeah, now yeah, once they've shared encryption keys, the browser can now ask the server for the actual web page that we want. So let me bring these down. Cool. So we send a GET request to get the information that we want. Quickly draw that in. Okay, now here's where things start to get interesting. This HTTP GET request actually hits a load balancer, and then that load balancer then chooses which web server inside Google's huge infrastructure to actually hit. And then once the server gets hit, it sends back the HTML for that particular page. And yeah, because we're actually communicating in an encrypted fashion, even if there was like a man in the middle, so it's actually known as a man in the middle attack. If they were able to actually start to sniff the packets that are being sent from the server, they would only see like encrypted things, so they would not be able to actually see anything. So that's the whole point of doing TLS. We wanted to essentially create a secure tunnel between the browser and the server, so that when communication happens, if there's anyone that's reading the packets being sent across the network, they're not going to be able to see anything. So yeah, and then once your browser gets back the HTML, it then renders the page and shows it to you. Now, let's just quickly recap over what we've actually gone through while I just try and draw some nice. Okay, cool. That's the cache, that's the DNS server. We get sent back the IP address. Let me quickly delete this. Cool. Let's just quickly go over this. So essentially, once we have the IP address, we make a TCP connection. We then do a TLS handshake so that the method of communication is secure. Then we send a HTTP GET request. Once the server actually sends us back the HTML for the page, we then render the page, and all of this happens in milliseconds. Like literally, when you click enter for Google.com, if it takes more than 3 or 4 seconds, you're usually worried. You're like, is something wrong? Now, all of this is being supported by infrastructure that we sometimes take for granted. Like we don't actually understand if certain companies were to go down, this would not be happening in milliseconds anymore. Actually, what would actually happen is this would never happen because the IP address of the server that we want will never actually come back to us, or sometimes we'll go get something wrong. So yeah, I mean, the company I want to talk about today is Cloudflare. If you don't know what Cloudflare is, essentially what it is, it's probably the world's largest CDN, which is content delivery network, and DNS servers. So essentially, it sends us the IP address of most websites. So it handles DNS resolution, stores stuff in its CDN so that everything's loaded pretty quickly. It also has load balancers to try and prevent distributed denial of service attacks. And so essentially what Cloudflare is, it's like the backbone of the internet. It's like the scaffolding that allows this to happen in milliseconds. Now, if Cloudflare was to go down, I think like the first thing that we can see here, wait, let me just actually make this obvious that this is Cloudflare. Cloudflare. Cool. Yeah. So if Cloudflare was to actually go down, we'd never actually be able to connect to the DNS servers to get back IP addresses for servers that we are trying to connect to. So that's number one. Let me draw like a red X there. Boom. And also, because many websites don't actually point directly to their origin servers, they point to Cloudflare servers. So when Cloudflare is offline, those IP addresses won't even respond anymore. And so yeah, you'd be searching for things and they'd never show up. And even if you are not searching for something in a browser, you'll be using a mobile app. But those mobile apps, use APIs, and those APIs need IP, need DNS resolution, because that's how they work. They are just making GET requests to get information loaded into their app. So Spotify would be down, TikTok would be down, Instagram would be down, and yeah, that's like step one. I think step two is once so number one would be websites not actually working. Number two will be mobile apps not working. Another thing that actually uses DNS servers like Cloudflare, things like smart home devices. So let's say you heavily rely on like a IoT device at home, that will not be working anymore if Cloudflare goes down. And yeah, even things like VPNs, like at work, your VPN will go down. So temporarily you're exposed. And yeah, that's number one. But let me just check my notes, see if I've covered everything. So yeah, if essentially if Cloudflare goes dark, a major portion of the internet will just disappear, and you won't be able to access any server unless you know the IP address of the server, and it's in your cache. But even if it's in your cache, that website is probably relying on other services that Cloudflare provides, like load balancing or VPN, or yeah, they provide a lot of services that websites make use of. So even if you do know the IP address, you may not be able to actually connect to the IP address. And this actually happened in 2019. Cloudflare was it hacked? So in 2019, something went wrong with Cloudflare, and it caused a 30-minute global outage, and traffic dropped by 82% across the entire Cloudflare network. So yeah, you can see the sort of scale that they're working with. Now, let's just quickly go over the hidden dependencies. So things that might not seem obvious at first. So I've already gone through the obvious things that will go down, things like mobile apps, websites, but even websites that are on their own network will probably start looking a bit weird. So things like let's say you're using a JavaScript library that's being stored in a content delivery network. It's probably being stored on Cloudflare, or like there's some involvement with Cloudflare's network. So yeah, I think rendering of sites will start to look a bit weird. Even things like authentication won't work. So yeah, you won't be able to log into your mobile apps or your banking apps or whatever. And yeah, essentially the effect of Cloudflare going down is probably one of the worst case scenarios that can happen to the internet. And because they're almost like a monopoly. I mean, there are different alternatives. There's like Akamai, there's Akamai, there's Cloudflare, there's a few others, but I think the lion's share belongs to Cloudflare. So yeah, that's a quick introduction to how the internet works, and in general what happens when you search for things in your browser. And also we mentioned one of the most important tech companies around, Cloudflare, what would actually happen if they went down, and the ramifications of that. So hope you enjoyed this live stream. And by the way, if it if it did seem like I was a bit discombobulated, I do have an eye infection, so I'm just powering through the discomfort right now. So bear with me. I'm gonna try and wrap this up into like a post for the live stream recap post. And yeah, and like I mentioned at the beginning, if you weren't here, I'm doing a giveaway this month to basically try to give back to the community that's supporting me on LinkedIn. And yeah, this month we're giving away an Amazon gift card worth £50. next month is going to be a much better prize, and like the months henceforth will be even better. So yeah, thank you for supporting, and I hope you learned something today. And yeah, see you guys soon.